Covenant in the Shadows. The night after my betrayal in Kaler's chambers, the year 1278 felt like a noose tightening around my heart. I, Aelis, descended into the cathedral's underbelly. The iron key Kaler had pressed into my palm, biting into my flesh. His words echoed, a dangerous vow, backstab me, and you'll lose everything. Backstab the church, and we'll be reborn together. I had chosen him not as a lover, not yet, but as an ally against the church's corruption. Yet, the Resistance's ultimatum still burned in my mind: kill Kaler, or be branded a traitor. Now, as I followed him through the labyrinthine tunnels to the church's secret archive, I wondered if my choice would save us or doom us both. The air was thick with damp and decay, the firelight from Kaler's torch casting jagged shadows on the moss-slick walls. His broad frame moved ahead, his black gold cloak a dark tide against the stone. My dagger, retrieved from his chambers, weighed heavy at my hip, no longer a weapon but a reminder of my fractured oaths. The archive held the church's darkest secrets, ledgers of stolen lands, pacts with foreign lords, and Kaler believed they'd spark the rebellion. I wanted to believe him, but Seymour's spies and Eilena's betrayal loomed like specters in the dark. Stay close, Kaler whispered, his voice low, commanding, yet laced with a warmth that unnerved me. He glanced back, his gray-blue eyes catching the torchlight like a storm over a frozen lake. The archive is guarded. One misstep, and we're both dead. I nodded, my breath shallow, the cold seeping through my cloak. You trust me to watch your back? I asked, my tone sharp, testing him. After I held a blade to your heart? He stopped, turning to face me, the torch casting his face in sharp relief, half shadow, half fire. I trust your aim, Aelis, he said, a ghost of a smile on his lips. It's your heart I'm still deciphering. His words cut deep, stirring the forbidden heat that had sparked in the snow, in his chambers. I wanted to hate him for seeing through me, but my traitor heart yearned for his gaze. We reached the archive's iron door, its surface etched with holy sigils that mocked our mission. Kaler knelt, working the key into the lock, his movements precise despite the tension in his shoulders. I scanned the tunnel, my ears straining for footsteps, my hand hovering over my dagger. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the drip of water and the faint hum of distant prayers above. The lock clicked, and the door groaned open, revealing a chamber lit by a single chandelier, its candles dripping wax onto shelves of leather-bound tomes. The air smelled of ink and secrets, the weight of the church's sins pressing against my chest. Kaler moved to a shelf, pulling out a ledger, his fingers tracing the pages with a reverence that surprised me. Here, he whispered, showing me a list of names nobles bribed, villages burned, all in Seymour's hand. This is our weapon. I leaned closer, our shoulders brushing, the contact sending a jolt through me. Enough to topple the church? I asked, my voice barely audible, my eyes locked on the damning words. Enough to start a war, he replied, his breath warm against my ear. For a moment, the world narrowed to us two traitors in a sea of shadows, bound by a cause and something deeper, something unspoken. I wanted to reach for him, to seal our pact with more than words, but a sound shattered the moment, a metallic clank, followed by boots on stone. Seymour, I hissed, drawing my dagger as Kaler shoved the ledger into his cloak. The tunnel echoed with shouts, torches flaring in the distance. They found us. Run. Kaler grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward a side passage, but the enemy was faster. 3 guards emerged, their swords gleaming, Seymour's black-robed figure looming behind them. His eyes glinted with triumph, his voice a venomous purr. Traitors in the church's heart. How fitting. Kaler pushed me behind him, his sword flashing free. Stay back, Aelis, he growled, his stance protective, defiant. The guards lunged, steel clashing in a storm of sparks. I darted to the side, my dagger slashing at a guard's arm, drawing blood, but no death I couldn't kill, not yet, not with Kaler's life in my hands. A blade grazed Kaler's shoulder, tearing his shirt, blood blooming dark against the fabric. He grunted, staggering but not falling, his sword felling one guard in a swift arc. "Aelis, the passage!" he shouted, his voice strained. I grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit, but Seymour's laughter stopped me cold. "You'll never leave this crypt," Seymour taunted, raising a crossbow. I shoved Kaler aside as the bolt flew, grazing my cloak and embedding in the wall. We stumbled into the passage, my hands fumbling for a cloth in my pack. I pressed it to Kaler's wound, his blood warm and slick under my fingers, his breath ragged against my cheek. "Keep moving," he gasped, but his weight leaned into me, his strength fading. I half dragged him through the tunnel, the firelight fading behind us, Seymour's shouts growing distant. In a narrow alcove, I stopped, tearing my cloak to bind his wound. His hand caught mine, his touch weak but firm, his eyes locking onto mine. "Your blood's on my hands, Kaler," I whispered, my voice breaking as I tied the cloth tight. "This debt, how do I repay it?" The words were a confession, a plea, as the torchlight painted his face in shades of pain and resolve. "You owe me nothing," he murmured, his fingers brushing my cheek, leaving a smear of blood. "But stay with me, Aelis. Fight with me." His touch was a vow, a forbidden promise that burned brighter than the candles above. I leaned closer, my forehead touching his, the world shrinking to the warmth of his skin, the pulse of his breath. A distant crash jolted us apart. Seymour's men, closer now. I helped Kaler stand, his arm around my shoulders, our steps uneven but united. The ledger was safe, but Eilena's betrayal had reached Seymour, her whispers fueling this ambush. As we fled deeper into the tunnels, a new truth settled in my bones. Our alliance was sealed in blood, but the Church's wrath and Eilena's vengeance would test it to the breaking point. I glanced at Kaler, his face pale but resolute, and knew I'd pay any price to keep him alive, even if it meant betraying my own heart. Judgment Night. 1 month after our desperate flight through the cathedral's tunnels, the winter of 1278 gripped the kingdom with unrelenting frost. I, Aelis, stood once more in the trial hall, my wrists unbound but my heart shackled by the weight of truth and betrayal. The air was thick with incense and menace, the candles' flames dancing like accusing eyes. Seymour's ambush in the archive had left Kaler wounded, our alliance exposed, and the ledger of the Church's sins clutched tightly in my cloak. Tonight, the Church would judge us both, Duke Kaler for his rebellion, and me, the false sister, for my defiance. But it was Eilena's betrayal, her whispers to Seymour, that had lit this pyre. "Your blood's on my hands, Kaler. This debt, how do I repay it?" My words from the tunnel echoed, a vow I couldn't break, even as the noose tightened. The trial hall was a cavern of judgment, its stone pillars looming like silent executioners. Hundreds of candles lined the walls, their light fracturing into a mosaic of gold and shadow across the faces of the gathered nobles and clergy. Seymour stood at the center, his black robes absorbing the light, his voice a blade honed by triumph. "Duke Kaler," he declared, holding aloft the forged rebel sigils and stolen letters, "you stand accused of treason against the Church, consorting with heretics." His eyes slid to me, venomous. "And you, Aelis, false sister, are the blade in his shadow." I stood defiant, my cloak heavy with the hidden ledger, my gaze locked on Kaler. He sat enthroned at the hall's head, his black gold cloak pooling like spilled ink, his face a mask of cold authority. But I saw the flicker in his gray-blue eyes, a storm of resolve and fear, mirroring my own. Eilena sat nearby, her fox fur cloak gleaming, her smile sharp as a dagger. She'd betrayed us to Seymour, her jealousy a poison that now threatened to burn us both. The crowd's murmurs swelled, a tide of judgment, but I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the noise. "Your evidence is a lie, Seymour," I said, my tone steady despite the pulse hammering in my throat. The Church's sins are written in your hand, not ours. The words were a gamble, a spark to ignite the truth. I reached into my cloak, pulling out the ledger, its pages heavy with the Church's corruption names, bribes, burned villages. The crowd gasped, and Seymour's face paled, but his composure held. Lies from a heretic. He spat, gesturing to the guards. Seize her. Before they could move, Kaler rose, his presence silencing the hall. His boots echoed on the stone, each step a defiance of the Church's chains. No, he said, his voice low, resonant, a command that shook the air. Ailey speaks truth. I stand with her. The words were a thunderclap, and the crowd erupted, nobles shouting, clergy clutching their crosses. Eilena's eyes widened, her hands trembling with rage. Seymour's laugh was cold, cutting. You admit your treason, Duke? And for this assassin? He gestured to me, his words dripping with scorn. Her blade was meant for your heart, yet you shield her. Why? Kaler's gaze met mine, and in that moment, the hall vanished, the candles, the crowd, Seymour's venom. There was only him, his eyes a storm of loyalty and something deeper, something forbidden. Because she is my truth, he said, his voice soft but unyielding. The Church's lies end tonight. The hall exploded in chaos, but my heart stilled, caught in his words. I wanted to reach for him, to seal our rebellion with a touch, but the weight of my secret stopped me. I was no mere sister, no simple assassin. I was the daughter of a priestess, branded a heretic at birth, my blood a curse the Church had hunted for years. If I revealed it, I could shatter Seymour's lies, but I'd de-risk everything: Kaler's trust, our alliance, my life. I stepped forward, my voice rising over the din. I am no heretic, I declared, my hands trembling as I raised the ledger. But I am the daughter of Lasara, priestess of the old faith, condemned by this Church to hide its own sins. The words tore from me, a confession that burned like fire. The crowd fell silent, their shock a palpable weight. Seymour's face twisted, his lie exposed, but Eilena's reaction was worse. She rose, her eyes blazing, and drew a dagger from her cloak. You'll pay for stealing him, she screamed, lunging at me. The blade flashed, aimed for my heart, but Kaler moved faster, his sword intercepting hers with a clash that echoed like a bell. Eilena staggered back, her face a mask of fury and betrayal. Kaler, you choose her over me? She hissed, her voice breaking. I choose justice, he said, his sword steady, his eyes never leaving her. You've betrayed us all, Eilena. The guards seized her, dragging her from the hall as she screamed, her curses swallowed by the crowd's roar. Seymour seized the moment, his voice rising. Heretic's blood or not, you both defy the Church. Guards, take them. But the crowd hesitated, nobles whispering, clergy divided. My revelation had cracked the Church's facade, and Kaler's stand fanned the flames. The trial teetered on the edge of chaos, the candles flickering as if sensing the storm. Kaler grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the hall's side exit, his touch a lifeline in the madness. We have to go, he whispered, his voice urgent, his fingers warm against mine. The ledger's enough to rally the resistance, but we need time. His grip tightened, and I felt the weight of his trust, his rebellion, our forbidden bond. As we slipped into the corridor, the candles cast our shadows as one, a fleeting promise in the dark. But Seymour's shout followed us, and the guards' boots echoed close behind. My revelation had bought us time, but Eilena's betrayal and Seymour's wrath would hunt us. I clutched the ledger, my heart torn between the truth I'd bared and the man beside me, a man I could no longer kill, but might die for. Escape in the snowfield. The dawn after the trial hall's chaos, in the winter of 1278, broke over a kingdom shrouded in ice and betrayal. I, Aelis, fled through the snow-choked wilderness, my boots sinking into drifts, my breath fogging in the frigid air. Beside me, Kaler stumbled, his black gold cloak torn, his face pale from the wound that had reopened in the archive. The ledger of the church's sins was clutched in my arms, its weight a promise and a curse. My confession in the trial: my name is your sin, Kaler. Do you still dare to love me? Had shattered Seymour's accusations but ignited a new hunt. The church's soldiers pursued us, their torches flickering like vengeful spirits in the storm, and Eilena's betrayal had armed them with our every move. The snow fell in relentless sheets, blurring the world into a white void. My cloak was heavy with frost, my shoulder throbbing where Seymour's bolt had grazed me in the archive. Kaler's breath came in ragged gasps, his hand pressed to his side, blood seeping through his fingers. I gripped his arm, steadying him, my heart a war drum against the howl of the wind. Keep moving, I urged, my voice sharp, though fear clawed at my throat. We're almost to the safe house. His gray-blue eyes met mine, fierce despite his pain. You should have left me, he rasped, his voice low, carrying the weight of our shared rebellion. You're risking everything, Elise. I tightened my grip, his warmth a lifeline in the cold. I risk nothing if you fall, I said, the words a confession I couldn't hold back. His touch in the trial, his stand against Seymour, had bound us tighter than any vow. I was no longer just an assassin, I was his ally, his shadow, his sin. We staggered through the snow, the ruins of an old watchtower looming ahead, its broken walls a fragile promise of shelter. The resistance had promised a safe house here, a place to regroup and spread the ledger's truths. But the crunch of boots behind us grew louder, the church's hunters closing in. I glanced back, catching the flicker of torches through the storm, their light slicing the darkness like blades. Elise, Kaler said, his voice steady despite his faltering steps, if they catch us, you run. The ledger matters more than me. He pressed a bloodied hand to my cheek, his touch cold but burning, a forbidden anchor in the chaos. I shook my head, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. Don't you dare, I whispered, my voice breaking. I won't lose you. The words were reckless, a vow that defied my mission, my past, the resistance's demands. I had been sent to kill him, yet here I was, fighting to save him. We reached the watchtower's shadow, its stones crumbling under the weight of snow. I pushed open a rusted iron door, the hinges screaming, and pulled Kaler inside. The air was stale, thick with dust and the faint echo of forgotten prayers. A single candle burned on a makeshift altar, its flame a trembling beacon in the dark. I eased Kaler against the wall, his breath shallow, his blood staining the stone. My hands fumbled for a cloth, tearing another strip from my cloak to bind his wound. His eyes fluttered, but his hand caught mine, weak but resolute. You confessed, he murmured, his voice a thread of sound. Your mother, the old faith, why, Elise? His gaze searched mine, seeking the truth I'd bared in the trial, my heritage as a heretic's daughter, a secret that could damn us both. I pressed the cloth to his wound, my fingers trembling, his blood warm under my touch. Because lies were killing us, I said, my voice raw. The church wanted my blood, but I wanted the truth. And you. The last words slipped out, a sin I couldn't retract, and his eyes softened, a storm giving way to dawn. You have me, he whispered, his hand tightening on mine. But the resistance, they'll never trust you now. His words cut deep, a reminder of the message I'd received in the trial's aftermath. The resistance, learning of my confession, demanded proof of my loyalty, kill Kaler, or face their wrath. Before I could answer, a shadow moved in the doorway. I spun, my dagger drawn, expecting Seymour's soldiers. Instead, a resistance fighter stepped into the candlelight, his face scarred, his eyes cold. Elise, he said, his voice like gravel. You've betrayed us. The Duke lives, and you confess to heresy? He drew a blade, his stance a threat, the safe house no longer safe. I stepped in front of Kaler, my dagger raised, my heart pounding. I betrayed no one, I said, my voice steady despite the fear. Kaler fights with us. The ledger proves it. I held up the book, its pages heavy with truth, but the fighter's eyes narrowed, unconvinced. Then prove it, he snarled. Kill him now, or you're no better than Seymour. The candle flickered, casting our shadows in a dance of betrayal. Kaler struggled to stand, his sword half drawn, but I pushed him back, my eyes locked on the fighter. No, I said, my voice ablade. We fight together, or we fall together. The words were a vow, not just to the resistance but to Kaler, to the forbidden fire that burned between us. The fighter hesitated, his blade wavering, but a distant shout broke the standoff. Seymour's soldiers, their torches closing in. Kaler gripped my arm, his voice urgent. Elise, we swear to them together. No more blood. His eyes held mine, a promise of rebellion, of love, of a future we might never see. I nodded, turning to the fighter. Stand with us, I said, my voice commanding. The church is the enemy, not him. The fighter lowered his blade, his eyes flickering with doubt but resolve. For now, he muttered, stepping back. We turned to the door, the storm howling outside, Seymour's forces drawing near. I helped Kaler stand, his weight heavy against me, and together we faced the snow, our alliance sealed in defiance. But as we stepped into the blizzard, his hand in mine, I felt the weight of my choice, a love that could save us or doom us, a truth that burned brighter than any candle. The candle of destiny. 3 months after our desperate flight from the cathedral, the winter of 1278 had hardened into a relentless shroud of ice and shadow. I, Elise, stood amidst the ruins of a forgotten border fortress, its crumbling walls cloaked in snow, the air thick with the acrid scent of smoke and steel. The ledger we'd stolen from the church's archive had ignited the rebellion, its pages of corruption rallying outcasts and nobles alike. Now, the resistance clashed with the church's army in this desolate wasteland, their swords ringing like a requiem. Kaler fought beside me, his black gold cloak torn, his gray-blue eyes fierce with defiance. Our alliance, forged in blood and secrets, had brought us here, but my confession in the trial hall, my name is your sin, Kaler. Do you still dare to love me? Still hung between us, a vow untested by the fire of this final battle. The sky was a bruise of gray, snow falling like ashes, blurring the chaos of clashing steel and shouted prayers. I gripped my dagger, its blade nicked from countless fights, my heart pounding with the weight of our mission, expose the church's lies, end Seymour's reign, save Kaler. The ledger was our weapon, its truths copied and spread among the rebels, but Seymour himself led the church's forces, his black robes a specter in the storm. He sought our blood, and Elena's betrayal had armed him with every secret of our plan. Elise, to the left. Kaler's voice cut through the din, sharp and commanding. I spun, my dagger parrying a soldier's blade, its edge grazing my arm. Blood seeped through my cloak, warm against the cold, but I fought on, my eyes locked on Kaler as he carved through the enemy, his sword a blur of steel. He was a storm, unyielding, but his shoulder wounded in the archive slowed him, each swing a grimace of pain. We pushed toward the heart of the ruins, where a crumbling tower stood, its spire a jagged finger against the sky. The resistance had planned to broadcast the ledger's truths from here, a beacon to rally the kingdom. But Seymour's forces closed in, their torches flickering like vengeful stars. I stumbled over a broken stone, my breath ragged, and Kaler's hand caught mine, pulling me upright. His touch was fire, grounding me amidst the chaos, and for a moment, the battle faded. There was only him, his warmth, his unwavering gaze. Stay with me, he said, his voice low, urgent, his fingers tightening around mine. We end this together. I nodded, my heart a battlefield of fear and love. Always, I whispered, the word of vow I hadn't meant to speak. His eyes softened, a flicker of the man beneath the duke, but a cry shattered the moment. Seymour, striding through the snow, his crossbow raised, his voice a venomous hymn. Aelis, daughter of heresy. He bellowed, his eyes glinting with malice. Your rebellion dies here, with your traitor duke. He aimed at Kaler, the bolt gleaming in the torchlight. I moved without thought, shoving Kaler aside, the bolt grazing my shoulder, pain flaring like a brand. I staggered, but Kaler's arm caught me, his sword flashing to meet Seymour's guards. You'll pay for that, Kaler growled, his voice a promise of wrath. He fought like a man possessed, driving back the guards, but Seymour retreated, his laughter echoing as he vanished into the storm. The resistance rallied, their shouts rising, but I saw the blood on Kaler's side. His old wound had reopened, his shirt dark with it. Kaler. I dropped to his side, my hands pressing against the wound, the warmth of his blood seeping through my fingers. The snow fell heavier, a white veil around us, the battle's roar fading to a distant hum. His face was pale, his breath shallow, but his eyes held mine, fierce and unbroken. Don't you dare die, I whispered, my voice breaking, tears freezing on my cheeks. Not now, not after everything. I tore a strip from my cloak, binding his wound, my hands trembling with fear and desperation. The ledger was safe with the resistance, but without Kaler, this victory would be ash. He grabbed my wrist, his grip weak but resolute. Aelis, he rasped, his voice a thread of sound, you're my salvation. Always were. His words pierced me, a confession that burned brighter than the torches around us. I leaned closer, my forehead touching his, the snow a cold halo around our shared breath. Then live, I said, my voice fierce, a command to fate itself. If God won't save you, I'll rewrite destiny with my own hands. A shout broke through resistance fighters, holding the tower, raising Kaler's family crest, a silver hawk on black, alongside the ledger's copied pages. The rebels chanted, their voices a tide against the church's lies, but Seymour's forces regrouped, their torches closing in. I helped Kaler stand, his weight heavy against me, his sword still clutched in his hand. We have to reach the tower, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos. The truth goes out tonight, or we die for nothing. He nodded, his eyes burning with determination, and we stumbled through the snow, the battle raging around us. But as we neared the tower, a figure emerged from the shadows. Aelina, her gold hair matted with snow, a dagger in her hand, her eyes wild with vengeance. You took everything. She screamed, lunging at me. Kaler moved, his sword intercepting her, but his strength faltered, and he stumbled, blood pooling beneath him. I caught him, my dagger flashing to block Aelina's strike, our blades clashing in a shower of sparks. Enough, Aelina. I shouted, my voice raw. Your betrayal ends here. I disarmed her, the dagger skittering across the snow, and she fell to her knees, her sobs swallowed by the storm. The resistance seized her, but my focus was Kaler, his breath fading, his eyes fluttering shut. I dragged him to the tower's base, the rebels forming a shield around us. The ledger's truths were shouted to the wind, carried by runners to the kingdom's edges, but Kaler's life hung by a thread. I clutched his family crest, the silver hawk warm in my hand, and pressed it to his chest. Live, Kaler, I whispered, my voice a prayer, a plea. For me. The snow fell, the battle raged, and his eyes flickered open, a faint spark in the storm. But as the rebels' cries rose, a new sound echoed Seymour's voice, rallying his forces for a final assault. Kaler's fate, our rebellion, my heart all teetered on the edge, and I knew my choice would shape the dawn.